Hello, this is Smokey, and today I'd like to show you some 1.14 gravity block conveyors. So in 1.14, Mojang removed the ability to have gravity blocks float on top of fences, and that was used for a lot of things such as concrete generators and specific mob farms to delete arrows from skeletons. However, if you saw my 19W06A 1.14 snapshot video that I released a couple months ago, I showed that you can use block 36 or moving piston, as it's now called, to keep your floating sand or other gravity blocks. So if I just set block a moving piston here and drop a sand on top of it, the sand stays floating. So this works exactly as before, and you can reload the sand and it stays in the same place. Unfortunately, in the snapshot video, I also showed that you could use the falling sand to delete arrows, just as before. But in the 1.14 full release, this no longer works anymore. Now the arrows just sort of bounce on top of the falling sand and don't get deleted. I'm not sure what changed between 19W06A and 1.14 full release. All I know is that this doesn't work anymore. Even if you reload the world, the arrows are still there, and for some reason they also have particle effects coming out of them now. So yeah, that is quite unfortunate. But yeah, the main point of this video is to show 1.14 conveyors for gravity blocks. But of course, you need the block 36 there. And of course you need to do that in survival as well, otherwise it's not very useful except for builders who would build in creative. So I have a few designs for block 36 generators. Well, only one design, just modified in different ways. But yeah, I have a video about some of them, and I will go over them more in depth at the end of the video. But yeah. They work just fine in 1.14. So the main premise behind these conveyors is basically the same as before. We have a long line of either fences or walls, but then of course we have the block 36 above them. So if I drop a concrete powder down, what you would expect would happen when you move the slime is that the concrete powder would just keep going. But if you saw my snapshot video, this is not the case. Client side, it looks like it goes much further than it actually does. But server side, it only moves 4 or 5 blocks depending on how you push it. But from wherever you push it, it will always end up in the same position server side. So basically every 5 blocks we have another slime that pushes down and moves the gravity block 5 additional blocks. And it works with multiple gravity blocks, so if you want you can drop some anvils down, some concrete powder, and yeah, like I said, client side they kind of just do their own thing, but server side they all end up in the same position. And then you can just continuously move this. And what you can also do is align the gravity blocks. So like in previous versions, you could align the gravity block by one-ticking this block over and pushing this gravity block halfway on top of these blocks, and these blocks have block 36 above them, and partially on this side of the block, so we can push it with slime. And this will work the same way. So you can push it down, push it over, and something slightly easier is you can align the gravity block against a glass pane or a fence and just have it so the middle of the falling block's hitbox is on the side with the block 36, and then this will work the same way. But all of the designs I will show will be using walls instead of aligning the gravity blocks, just because it's a lot more simple to use walls. But most of the designs I show can be modified to use this instead. This first design uses tripwires, and it works by when this concrete powder gets moved, it will activate this tripwire and activate this module, which will push the concrete powder an additional 5 blocks, and then just keep repeating. So as you can see, the concrete powder gets to the end and then it falls down. And the stats on this design is that it can move the gravity blocks at 11.25 meters per second. However, the reset time is quite slow, so you can only send a new gravity block every 16 game ticks, or a cluster of gravity blocks every 16 game ticks. So I have a 16 game tick clock here. And at the end here, we're getting a consistent stream of concrete powder, 1 every 16 game ticks. And if I turn this off, all of the concrete powder gets to the end, and it's all reset again. Now, this design isn't that great. For one, the reset time, like I mentioned, and this design does use 1 redstone dust every module that I wasn't able to remove. But the real deal breaker of this design, I would say, is that if a mob walked in here and you started sending gravity blocks, the whole thing would jam and then it would break. So I wouldn't recommend building this design unless you have a mob switch. Now, the second design I built is much better than the first design, in my opinion. So we are no longer using tripwires, and we just have a single repeater line activating all of the modules, and each module only consists of 1 observer, a few repeaters, and the pistons. And this design transports the gravity blocks slightly faster at 12.5 meters per second, and the reset time is also slightly faster, so you can send a new gravity block or a cluster of gravity blocks every 13 game ticks. So if I turn this 13 game tick clock on, I'm summoning several sand or concrete powder, and it's quite glitchy, as you've seen before for the client. But if we come down here, eventually all of the concrete powder gets synced up back with the client, and we are getting a consistent stream every 13 game ticks. And if I turn off the clock, all the concrete powder gets to the end. And of course, you do not have to run this on a 13 game tick clock. You can run this on any clock slower than 13 game ticks. So I have a 14 game tick clock here, and that works just as good. So for most cases, this would probably be a go-to design, unless you could compact it slightly more, but yeah, for most cases, this would probably be a good design to use. Now, the final design that I built isn't very practical. I just thought I'd have some fun. So this design can transport the gravity blocks at 20 meters per second, and the reset time is only 10 game ticks, so you can send 2 gravity blocks per second. And I have a 10 game tick clock here. And if I come over here, we're getting a new concrete powder every 10 game ticks. And just like the design over here, you do not have to run this on a 10 game tick clock. You can run this on any clock slower than 10 game ticks. The way I was able to reach 20 meters per second was by moving the slime 1 closer to each other. So instead of 1 slime every 5 blocks, like in the other designs, we have 1 slime every 4 blocks in this design. Now I'm also 1-ticking these 2 pistons to 1-tick the sticky piston and the slime down. However, I'm fairly certain that you can get away without using the 1-tick at all. I'm fairly sure you can just do the same thing as this design over here instead of the 1-tick. But once I got a working design for this, I just didn't bother changing it. Alright, so those were all of the gravity block conveyors I had to show. Now let's talk about obtaining the block 36 in survival that you need. And there are multiple videos going over this subject matter already, so I will link down to other references in the description if you want to learn more. But something you should know if you haven't watched those videos is that all of the block 36 generated here are TE-less, which means that they do not cause any lag and they're like any other block. They're just invisible. So because we need a long line of block 36, I had to make an expandable block 36 generator for a long line, and I made two designs. Now the first design is slightly simpler to build than the second design. However, this design here tends to not be very reliable. And the reason why it's not very reliable is that when we blow up this end crystal, it may not blow up all the brewing stands, because brewing stands have a blast resistance of 2.5. Well, over here we are using block 36 as our ticking time entity, and block 36 has a blast resistance of 0. Now, if you want to make this design slightly more reliable, you can replace some of the brewing stands on the end with daylight detectors, and daylight detectors only have a blast resistance of 1, so they are slightly better than brewing stands. But of course they are more expensive than brewing stands because they require quartz. So what you need to do is place an end crystal on top of the obsidian here, and then flick this lever. And in this case, all of the brewing stands and daylight detectors were blown up, and now we have a strip of 11 long block 36. And then you can just continue doing that. That one worked. This one also worked. And that one worked as well. But like I said, they can sometimes fail. And this obsidian here on each side is just to prevent the end crystal from the next module destroying block 36 from the previous module. And what you see here, these are all ghost blocks. They are like block 36 with ghost blocks inside of them. So if you relog, all these blocks will disappear. And then if you try to place a block there, you won't be able to because there's block 36. Now the second design here is more difficult to build, but like I said, it is much more reliable than the other one, and I have not had this one fail. So just like the other one, you place the end crystal, and then you activate this lever, and now we have an 11 long line of block 36. So you can just continuously place end crystals, flick the lever, and now we have a 44 block long line of block 36, just like over here. And if we relog, they have gone invisible, and now you can place your walls under them. So yeah, they were right here, and if I try to place a block above them, I can't. If you want to remove the block 36, the only easy way to do that in 1.14 is with explosions. So if I place a TNT here, and then replace the walls, as you can see, the wall hitbox is changed back to normal, and I can place blocks above it again. Anyways, that's all I have to show for this video. If you want to take a look at this stuff for yourself, I'll provide a world download link in the description. But other than that, I'll see you guys next video. Bye.